The entertainment industry mourning the life of the iconic record producer and music giant Clive Davis. We have just confirmed that he's passed away.
We've had an unbelievable chemistry.
Really?
Sitting next to me right now is the best singer in the world today.
Thank you, Clive.
There are people in the music industry who are in the spotlight and people who are in the spotlight themselves. Among them is Clive Davis. He was the mastermind behind the names that altered the course of music history for more than 60 years, including Whitney Houston, Santana, Barry Manilow, and numerous other luminaries. He made obscure musicians into international celebrities. When the rest of the world doubted talent, he saw it. He used choices that others deemed insane to create a billion-dollar empire. However, the mogul of moguls decided not to take his secrets with him as he closed his eyes for the last time. His last message was a long overdue deathbed confession that upended the world's preconceived notions about success, popularity, and careers. What specifically transpired behind closed doors in Hollywood that compelled the man in charge of the entertainment business as a whole to entirely change his perspective? No one anticipated that the orphan youngster would become a legend. New York, Brooklyn, 1932. Clive J. Davis was born into a typical, if not impoverished, family in the Crown Heights neighborhood during the height of the Great Depression. Herman, his father, was a dedicated electrician with a side gig selling ties. Florence, his mother, was a devoted housewife. Despite having no musical ability, young Clive had a strong love for the Brooklyn Dodgers and a rigorous academic perspective. He lacked a natural singing voice, was incapable of playing an instrument, and had no idea that his name would eventually come to represent the future of international music. However, fate always manages to put the most terrible disasters to the test for those who are selected. A terrible storm struck Clive's life as he was thriving at New York University as a student of political science. His mother and father both unexpectedly died in less than 11 months. His cozy home was destroyed, and his primary source of financial and emotional support, music, completely disappeared, leaving nothing but utter terror in its wake. However, the young man's remarkable willpower awakened inside instead of crumbling under the shadow of fate. He started a hard routine after moving to Queens to live with his sister Sina. He submerged himself in his studies to escape reality, clinging to texts to carve himself a route to survival. Eventually, that perseverance and keen intellect paid off. Clive was awarded a prestigious full scholarship to Harvard Law School, which is the ultimate training ground for the intellectuals who create social norms. After receiving his official degree in 1956, he entered the elite upper class as a gifted lawyer. For a model citizen, everything appeared to be going according to plan. However, no one could have predicted that this elite law degree would not make him a judge or a politician, but would instead serve as the master key that would open the doors to an entirely different world where the glitz, wealth, and of Hollywood's darkest schemes awaited him. The outsider, who toppled the established order, is the fateful turning point. A young attorney was employed by Columbia Records in 1960 to deal with copyright and contracts involving music. Clive Davis was that man. The young attorney had an ironic truth when he entered the office back then. He had no knowledge of the entertainment industry at all. In subsequent interviews, Clive openly acknowledged that he had no concept how a recording studio worked, hardly comprehended music, and most definitely had no notion how to make a successful song when he initially arrived in Colombia. However, the world was unaware that Clive Davis's most potent weapon was his outsider. He approached music with the strong intuition of a pop psychologist and the astute intellect of a Harvard lawyer, rather than the ears of an artist. He was not constrained by antiquated norms. He was able to read people's minds and discern what the audience wanted, music, before they even realized it. The Mteri International Pop Festival, which took place in the summer of 1967, profoundly changed the course of world music history. Attending the event in a dapper businessman's suit, Clive Davis, who had by then risen to the rank of administrative vice president, looked utterly out of place among a sea of rebellious hippies. However, an actual earthquake occurred in the Mtera Valley directly in front of his eyes. He saw Jimi Hendrix perform a strange ritual by kneeling to light his guitar on fire. He saw The Who perform on stage, smashing their instruments to pieces. And most of all, he froze dead in his tracks in front of the raw, gut-wrenching voices of Janis Joplin and Big Brother and the holding company. While the conservative CEOs of that era laughed it off, dismissing that rebellious music as just a fleeting phase for wayward youths, the genius mind of Clive Davis made a bold assertion. Rock music is more than just a craze. It is what is ahead. Despite the CBS board of directors' skepticism, Clive Davis signed Janis Joplin right away following that fateful night at Mtera. That was the initial shot that started a huge revolution. Santana Chicago, Billy Joel, Bruce Springsteen, Aerosmith, and Earth, Wind, and Fire were among the artists he brought in during his frantic signing binge as the recently appointed head of Columbia Records. Columbia Records, a record label that had previously only been successful in Broadway musicals and classical music, became an empire ruling the era of modern rock and pop as a result of this reckless investment, which caused revenue to soar at an accelerated rate. Clive Davis, a lawyer who had no idea what a musical note looked like, had formally ascended to the position of music mogul, determining who would ascend to the pinnacle of worldwide fame. But then 1973 arrived. Under Clive Davis's direction, Columbia Records was at the height of its success and influence when a lightning strike occurred. From the height of celebrity to a startling decline and the ultimate, unexpected return. The man who had earned them hundreds of millions of dollars was abruptly fired by the CBS administration. To make matters worse, the record label sued its own former president, claiming that he had embezzled business funds for personal needs, such as paying for his son's bar mitzvah and remodeling his opulent apartment. Clive Davis's life was entirely upended overnight. At the time, the music business was engulfed in a flurry of federal investigations into narcotics and polliola. Although he was never convicted of polliola, the image of a powerful president being led away surrounded by a lengthy line of camera lenses and sensationalized headlines constituted a tremendous cultural shock back then. The man at the head of a music empire was suddenly at the center of a national scandal involving music. Even the strongest will could be shattered by losing everything at the age of 41, during the height of his musical career. Those who had previously bowed before him abruptly turned away and pretended they had never met him, damaging his reputation. Clive Davis found himself in a precarious situation, where he was used as a scapegoat for the corrupt practices of the corporate system. However, this was precisely when the perseverance of a Harvard law genius and an orphan who overcame hardship in Brooklyn was on full show. Everyone was astounded by Clive Davis's attitude: no giving up, no whining, and certainly no getting sucked into pointless media battles. In 1975, he paid a $10,000 fine after discreetly entering a guilty plea to a small tax issue involving only $8,800 in travel costs. That was a tactical retreat to regroup rather than a surrender for a reward. He realized that the best way to exact revenge on those who had deceived him was not with justifications, but with a far harsher penalty, which resulted in a success that was many times more magnificent. Then, just as his reputation was in ruins, he pulled off a recovery that very few people in corporate history have ever accomplished. Bell Records, a record label on the verge of bankruptcy, was taken over by Clive in 1974. Inspired by his own high school honor society, he ruthlessly destroyed everything and rebuilt it under the new name Arista Records. This was more than just launching a new business. Clive Davis would prove to all of Hollywood that this was the beginning of a new era of power. The Colombian president's office did not have the authority to create stars. It belonged in his own head. Arista Records and the ultimate gamble called Whitney Houston with Arista Records. Clive Davis did more than simply revive his career. For the next 30 years, He transformed the label into a haven for singles that reached the top of the charts. Clive's ability to bring back icons, who appeared to have been lost by time, was his greatest skill at Arista. He helped Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul, return to the top of the charts with her album Who's You Mean. He also helped Carlos Santana pull off the greatest comeback in Grammy history, with the masterpiece Supernatural, and transformed Barry Manilow into a worldwide hitmaker, beginning with the song Mandy. However, of all the miracles that Clive Davis has accomplished, his encounter with Whitney Houston is still regarded as the most sacred, fateful, and emotionally impactful chapter. In a tiny, dark New York nightclub in 1983, a 19-year-old black girl had just taken the stage to perform, and Clive Davis was sitting in the audience listening carefully. A shock of electricity shot down Clive's spine as that voice soared. It was more than just a fantastic voice. It was a once-in-a-century gem, a gift from God. That same evening, he signed her on the spot because he had complete faith in her. Their relationship went beyond that of a manager and an artist, like a godfather defending his favorite child. Whitney Houston recorded the song, I Will Always Love You, for the film The Bodyguard in 1992, marking a historic moment in music history as a result of that fatal link. The entire board of executives and radio station programmers protested vehemently when the initial demo was sent. Whitney's roughly 45-second a cappella beginning, they claimed, was commercial suicide. It is excessively lengthy. Before the music even starts, radio stations will switch it off. The viewers will flip between channels. Clive's office was filled with intense warnings. However, Clive Davis firmly shook his head, using his ultimate power and a genius's intuition. He commanded that the dramatic introduction be preserved in its entirety, pounded the table, and dismissed any business worries. They don't understand anything about the soul of this song. Let her sing, he said. The outcome of that stubbornness became history. Whitney's raw, lonely, and gut-wrenching vocals echoing through that musicless silence instantly gripped the hearts of millions from the very first seconds. In the 1990s, when Clive Davis was firmly seated on the throne of modern pop and R&B as a living legend, the music industry abruptly welcomed a new cultural wave, hip-hop. The song dominated the Billboard Hot 100 chart for 14 weeks in a row, becoming one of the best-selling singles of all time and an immortal love song across generations. Clive Davis proved to the entire world while everyone else looked at commercial numbers. When a young man named Sherlock Holmes Diddy entered Clive Davis's office in 1993 after being fired from another record label, the old lawyer had very little knowledge of rap culture or the world of hip-hop management. At the time, most seasoned Hollywood executives turned their backs, dismissing hip-hop as violent street music that was just a passing fad with no long-term commercial value. But when Sean Combs showed him the Craig Max Flavor in Year demo, Clive's predatory instinct was set off once more. What stunned Hollywood was Clive Davis's attitude. A man in his 60s, with a roster of immortal legends and dozens of Grammys, decided to lower his ego instead of using his veteran experience to lecture or dictate to the young. Rather, he chose in order to listen to, learn, and fully comprehend the nuances of street culture from a man who was young enough to be his son. Clive made a huge wager, giving Sean Combs $15 million to start Bad Boy Records. It was that bold choice and his visionary foresight that opened the door for the golden age of mainstream hip-hop. From the launchpad of Bad Boy Records, names that shook music history emerged. The infamous B.I. Faith Evans Mace and numerous other performers. Hip-hop, which generated billions of dollars in revenue, went straight from being a marginalized genre into the mainstream of contemporary culture. The most successful person is not the one who knows the most, but the one who never stops learning. While his contemporaries chose to cling to past glory and were phased out, Clive Davis chose to move forward with the curiosity of a child, which is why, regardless of his age, he was always ahead of his time, shaping the flow of global music. This profound underlying message was behind the rise of the Bad Boy Records empire. The Truth in the Shadows, a confession at age 80 in 2013, Clive Davis once again rocked the Hollywood entertainment industry at the age of 80. However, this time, the earthquake came from the unvarnished pages of his autobiography, The Soundtrack of My Life, rather than a chart-topping hit, or a recently discovered genius artist. In the midst of glamorous and musical memoirs, that influential man openly revealed a secret he had kept hidden for decades. He was bisexual. While coming out about one's sexual orientation may seem like a common story in today's world, we must go back in time to the era that Clive Davis ruled in order to comprehend why his admission was so shocking. For decades, the man at the pinnacle of Hollywood's power had to conceal the deepest, most private parts of his soul behind sharp suits, opulent pre-Grammy galas, and billion-dollar contracts. He had married, had 4 children, and then, after his divorces, he quietly experienced deep romantic relationships with both women and men in complete media silence. Clive Davis's decision to speak the truth at the age of 80 was not just a brave act. Shedding the heavy burden of secrecy in his final years was the ultimate declaration that the greatest glory is not about how many hits you own or how much wealth you possess, but when you dare to face your own truth before time runs out. It was the greatest moment of liberation in Clive Davis's life, as he no longer had to live for the expectations of others. Beneath the veneer of an immortal legend, Clive Davis proved to the world that he was just a human being with a desire to be understood and be himself. A huge fortune and the high society behind the scenes. When people look back on Clive Davis's life, they see not only a brilliant musical mind, but also a sharp business mind that helped him accumulate a massive fortune, making him a symbol of New York luxury. Clive Davis's wealth is on full display through his elite real estate portfolio. In the center of Manhattan, he owns a mini empire with at least 5 apartments inside the same iconic building at 465 Park Avenue. He listed one of those 5 units for $7.8 million in 2017, but he then reduced the asking price to $6.2 million and removed it from the market in 2019. So you can see how pricey this is. And it doesn't end in Manhattan. Clive Davis also owns a luxurious vacation home in Westchester County, New York, which he purchased in 1991 after his second divorce. The monthly condo maintenance fee for this single unit alone was an astounding $11.7, a sum that is equivalent to a fortune to many. This property, which has an 8,000 square foot main house and a 6,000 square foot guest house, is where he frequently hosts powerful moguls and celebrities every weekend. Most notably, the estate has an opulent home theater that can accommodate up to 30 people. But what really makes high society tip their hats in respect is his priceless art collection. Clive Davis's personal collection, valued at up to $100 million, includes original works of art by some of the greatest artists in history, including Pablo Picasso, Andy Warhol, Damien Hirst, Dale Chihuly, and Adolphe Couture. In addition to his real estate, this collection solidifies a different standard of living for the music executive, a man who not only created art in the studio, but also appreciated the height of human artistry in his own home. One last message from the top of the throne. Within his lonely Park Avenue penthouse apartment, surrounded by priceless Picasso and Warhol paintings worth a total of $100 million, the man who has passed the age of 90 sits silently in his armchair as the last notes of the timeless love song, "I Will Always Love You," slowly fade away and the flashes from the planet's most extravagant Grammy red carpets shut off the world of billion-dollar parties gives way to a vast, quiet stillness. Ultimate fame, enormous wealth, the ability to change an entire entertainment industry, and 5 golden Grammy statues, all legitimately earned as a mastermind producer. He was the only man who could pick up the phone and change someone's destiny overnight, but only through the lens of his twilight years. Looking back at that incredibly long journey, the mogul of moguls realized a truth that completely flips modern society's definition of success. True success, according to Clive Davis, was never about having the ultimate ability to control others or rule at the top. The fundamental principle that enabled him to endure every era was the bravery to believe in talent when no one else had yet to see it. It was that fierce belief when he saw Whitney Houston, a slender 19-year-old black girl, and dared to declare she would change the world. Above all, success to him was the humility to never stop learning, even while standing at the absolute pinnacle. A 60-year-old legend could still sit in silence for hours just to listen to a young man in his early 20s like Sha Combs explain street hip-hop culture that isn't just business savvy. It was the courage to stand his ground when the rest of the world was against him, just like the way he slammed the table, ignoring all economic pressure from large corporations in order to preserve the artist's soul. That is the greatness of an unbounded mind. From the pinnacle of an illustrious life, Clive Davis distilled all of his hard-won lessons to impart a fundamental message to future generations: never let age, failure, or fear prevent you from trying something new. This message is a potent wake-up call for anyone lost in the rush of life. Clive Davis was neither a vocalist nor a lyricist hiding behind intricate musical sheets. The future always belongs to those who dare to listen to what others cannot hear. However, there is an indisputable fact: for more than 60 years, millions of people have cried, laughed, experienced heartbreak, and learned how to love through the very music he dedicated his entire life and honor to help create the immortal legacy of the Starlighter. Despite living a life of luxury and ultimate power, what makes Clive Davis truly immortal in the public's hearts is his philanthropic heart and his unwavering support of nurturing young talent. He gave $5 million in 2002 to start the Clive Davis Department of Recorded Music at the Tisch School of the Arts under New York University, NYU. In 2011, he gave an additional $5 million to modernize and grow the program, which led the school to rename it the Clive Davis Institute of Recorded Music. A living legacy that continues even after he passes away. As a producer, Clive Davis has won 5 Grammy Awards, including Album of the Year 1994 for Whitney Houston's iconic soundtrack for The Bodyguard, followed by a clean sweep by Santana's Supernatural album, Kelly Clarkson's Breakaway album, and Jennifer Hudson's debut album. In 2000, he was formally inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in the non-performer category, and received the Golden Plate Award from the American Academy of Achievement. And it's hard to overlook the annual pre-Grammy Gala he started back in the 1970s, the ultimate exclusive event that brings together the world's most brilliant titans, politicians, and biggest stars every single Grammy season. Looking back at the whole journey, Clive Davis's legacy is more than just the fact that he signed or collaborated with well-known artists. His true legacy lies in his innate ability to constantly recognize and anticipate the greatest shifts in popular music before anyone else of his time. Music will change over time, and stars will eventually fade into the shadows of the past. Few executives in the history of global entertainment have commanded such deep, widespread influence, mind-blowing longevity, and massive commercial power. One of the few minds whose name extends far beyond the boundaries of the music industry is Clive Davis. The greatest gift and legacy Clive Davis leaves to this world, however, is the ability to see the future in things no one else dared to believe in, leaving an impact that reverberates through generations of hit records. His greatest legacy is the unwavering belief that one person can change the entire world simply by seeing and awakening the hidden potential in others. He spent his entire life acting as a launchpad, as the sturdiest shield so that geniuses had the right to shine in their own unique way. As we wrap out the tale of a living legend, we come to an immutable truth: stars will eventually fade into the shadows of the past, and music will alter over time. However, music has the capacity to perceive the future in things that no one else did. That is Clive Davis's greatest musical gift and legacy. Post your homages to Clive Davis in the space provided for comments. We appreciate you watching the entire video. I'll see you later. Goodbye. The viewpoints of the content creators at the time of creation may be reflected in some of the subjective opinions expressed in this video. They should not be construed as factual facts or official stances. As long as we remember them, legends never really die. Please subscribe to Silent Legends if you would want to assist us in preserving these tales. What do you remember most about this icon? Post it in the comments section below. Your stories would be fascinating to read. On your screen, click this video. You don't want to miss this musical excursion. Until the next occasion.